Welcome to the Boise Metro Chamber's Higher Education Series. I'm your host, Holly Cook from the Chamber. And in the Higher Education Series, we aim to discuss important topics facing higher education here in Idaho. Today's episode is focused on how Idaho's colleges and universities are improving access to higher ed. We'll talk about some of the obstacles like affordability, opportunity, location, and program options. We're going to be joined by three presidents of Idaho's colleges and universities, all of whom are also members of the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce, which is Idaho's only five-star accredited Chamber of Commerce. But first, we wouldn't be able to bring you this important conversation without the generous support of our presenting sponsor, Sparklight. Sparklight is very invested in our community, and they have a really great deal for you. So before we begin, let's check out this great deal from Sparklight.
Your spring just got a lot greener. Switch to Sparklight's award-winning internet and save on speeds up to a gig with our lightning-fast, fiber-fueled network and proven 99.9% reliability. You can stream smoother, game faster, and work smarter. Plus, you'll get more out of all your devices with our guaranteed whole home Wi-Fi and unlimited data included. Don't miss out on our spring sale. Call or scan the code today to take advantage of our lowest price ever and free installation.
Welcome back. We're grateful to be joined by our panelists today for this first episode of the Higher Education Series. And I am very pleased to introduce first Mr. Mike Daniels from NLC, the Northwest Lineman College, Jim Everett, president of the College of Idaho, co-president of the College of Idaho, and Dr. Marlene Tromp, president of Boise State University. Presidents, thanks for being here today to talk about this important topic.
Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
Our pleasure. Thanks again. We're talking today about increasing access to education. And of course, in a perfect world, we would all have access to higher education and be able to pursue whatever career we wanted. But we all know there are some real obstacles and maybe some perceived obstacles as well. So we're going to discuss those today. And first is information. So I wanted to talk about what efforts your colleges and universities have made to inform the public about what programs and offerings you have. So let's start first with President Tromp from Boise State.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to get to be here and to talk about these things because I think this is incredibly important and to think about how we outreach to students. One of the areas that I've made the greatest emphasis on since I arrived is ensuring that we're reaching out to our rural communities because right now rural students are profoundly underrepresented in higher education. It tends to be kids who live close to campus or adults who live close to campus who are taking advantage of the opportunity to be in school. And so we've really sought to do a lot of outreach. And with the other public universities in the state, so let me mention that we've grown our in-state Idaho enrollment about 20%, and a lot of that is getting rural students into higher ed. With our partners around the state, our higher ed partners at the public universities, we also created a statewide campaign with our sister institutions to just educate people about how much a college education can change their lives. And we've also really worked to reach out to veterans, to high school students, to populations of people that are less likely to come to college to help them see what the opportunity is that's available for them.
That seems a very intentional and really noteworthy effort. So thank you so much for sharing those. President Daniels, some people watching today may not even know what a lineman is, and they may not know that they have a college right here in the Treasure Valley where they can learn those skills to pursue that career path. So what are you doing over at Northwest Lineman College to inform the public about what's available and what can you teach them today?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. Having 4 campuses across the country means it's both a challenge and opportunity to reach and inform potential students. NLC can meet and where they literally offer a 15-week program for the, it's called the Electrical Line Worker Program, started in Idaho, but is now in California, Texas, and Florida. The Electrical Line Worker Program has a unique benefit, which is a little different than the university setting. It's 4 short months, in duration. It brings students right into employment as an apprentice into the industry. It provides a living wage in an industry that's growing rapidly. I came from that same industry and went through the university later in life. But our ELP program is a 50-50 mix. They get academic settings, and then the other half, which a lot of people don't understand, is the field competencies and portion that they get trained in. That's in the area of climbing poles to, learning and gaining skill sets that operate equipment and trucks and all the tools and technology to do the work safely. The benefit of a graduate from the ELP program, it's longevity, career planning, apprenticeships, it's relevant craft skills, lifelong behaviors that will benefit the field in their career. It's multiple and with other avenues of training that are ongoing throughout one of these students' careers. And as far as reaching the potential students, Northwest Lineman College enrollments, they really come from three main forums, if you will. And, word of mouth is always been a big one at Northwest Lineman College. The industry refers also to the technical school. And then advertising and marketing is also a piece of the business as well. But those three spaces is typically how we reach students.
Awesome. So fantastic. And tell us where you're located, Mr. Daniels. Where is the college located?
Oh, okay. I'm not at the college, so no, in all seriousness, the college is on Meridian. It's been there for 30 years now. And then the other campuses are in Orrville, California, and Denton, Texas, and down just south of Daytona Beach in Florida.
So cool. Variety of options. That's awesome. All right, President Everett, you're up next. And the College of Idaho has a very successful international student program that continues to grow every year. So how do you explain to international students all over the world that they could study at College of Idaho of all places, and how do you make that possible for them?
Thanks, Holly. That is a big part of our student body. It's about 20%, almost 20% of our student population come from 81 different countries around the world. We're a part of what's called the Davis Scholars Program. So most of our students come from the United World College system. It's a movement that was started after World War II to bring students together for their last 2 years of high school. While it's called a college, it's more like a boarding school would be here, although the target population are low-income students who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity for an education. They bring about 100 different countries together on any campus, 18 of them around the world. Upon graduation, those students have an opportunity to go to any one of about 100 schools in the United States: Harvard, Princeton, Yale, MIT, University or Oklahoma University, some big schools. We're fortunate to get a lot because our tuition relative to a lot of those schools is lower. We match the scholarship, so these students come on a full tuition scholarship, including room and board, with the help of Shelby Davis. He writes a check every year. This guy should be getting a Nobel Peace Prize, $80 million to support these students. And while this is great for our international students, we think it's just as good for the domestic students who get to hear these stories. These students come from places where there are a lot of conflict areas around the world, where there are countries in a civil war, where we've got students from Ukraine and Russia, Myanmar, Syria, Palestine, you name it. We've got a student we've had several students that have been in places where they've experienced genocide in their population. Got a girl from Cambodia who lost a leg stepping on a landmine. And you hear all these stories of challenges and overcoming those. I've not met one international student that felt entitled, that felt they get it, that they're getting an opportunity that they want to take and run with. And so what that does for our domestic students is probably just as good. And recently, one of our students who grew up here in Boise went to a great private school here, said, I had a great upbringing in Idaho, and I'm so grateful for my education and everything I got. However, when I came to the College of Idaho, I walk in my room and I meet my roommates from South Sudan, a young man named Peter, who's now on his way to medical school. Walked in the cafeteria and I sit down with two students. I didn't know anybody, and so it's a student from Egypt and Syria. So the education that we get by having all these students here is great, and what those students go on to do is fun to see. So we are very, very fortunate to be a part of the Davis project, Davis Scholars Program.
Wow, $80 million. That's incredible. Holy moly.
Yeah, it doesn't all come to us.
Wow, so impressive. Well, the panelists today, all three of you are from very different institutions of higher ed. We've got a 4-year public university, a private liberal arts college, and then an industry-focused college whose flagship program is only 15 weeks. And there's a lot of innovations in education. People want different types of studies, different programs. So let's talk a little bit about the other programs that you offer, other than the things that people already know about, your main programs there. So President Daniels, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about, you started to mention the apprenticeships. Tell us the other program offerings that you have over at NLC.
Yeah, happy to. There's hundreds of utility and construction companies in the industry, gas, telecom, the renewables, as we are becoming front and center across the country. NLC is proud. They train line workers in the United States right to the tune of last year about 17,000 individuals, which is quite a number. And so you kind of wonder, well, how's that possible? Part of that happens through a mobile program that we support that goes basically anywhere that education can be delivered, and that can be right in the field or in a classroom setting, or both. And so, I know we already talked a little about the pre-apprentice program, but again, utilities and construction companies across the nation need refresher courses in line work, and so we provide that as well. The apprenticeship is a big piece. All crafts are, moving in that space. And there's just always been a little bit of a deficit of trying to fill that void. An apprenticeship, an electric apprenticeship, line worker apprenticeship, that is typically 4 years long. So we own and support a program like that and develop apprentices across the country as they work to become journeyman linemen. In 2002, NLC had about 40 apprentices, and today it stands right around a little over 5,500. And then this year alone, because of the demand on the electric grid and where the industry is changing and evolving, that we're going to add another 1,000 apprentices just this year. I mentioned mobile training as a service we provide that allows us to reach all those demographics or opportunities, and they've gone worldwide as far as Kabul, Afghanistan, and Tanzania and Africa. So, what's best for the students is usually, that's our ethos, one of our ethos, and we always use that as a guiding light to try to understand and create the flexibility, digitizing curriculum, a working student program, which is now starting to reach those that, work during the day or maybe raising a family. We're building those programs as we sit here today. And finally, we're reaching into the space of VR, 3D modeling, things like that help students learn and grasp the concepts quickly, and and also trying to establish some price sensitivity to that, because education can be expensive, especially in our space, because of the assets that are needed to actually train a student. So the field portion becomes kind of costly, and in a 15-week program, they're learning quite a bit. So they get their hands on quite a few things.
So cool. That's just a direct pipeline right to the workforce. That's incredible. The awesome opportunities. Love that. President Tromp, Boise State, how do you communicate, or what other programs do you have available other than just your flagship 4-year programs? Tell us about what's available.
Well, one of the exciting things that we're doing is, you heard me say that I was really committed to rural communities. And one of the things that's often true in rural communities is that people can't leave their community to go to school. So we're going to them, and we built hybrid model programs where they can have a cohort where they get to know the folks they're in school with. So we have a mix of traditional and non-traditional students, people who are working, supporting a family farm, supporting a family business. And they get to work in a hybrid model where they get to meet their faculty, meet their peers, but also have the flexibility of a partly online program. And so we're trying to find ways to make education outreach to people. I really appreciated what Mike was saying about the mobile aspect of his curriculum. And we're looking for ways to bring curriculum to people. We also have a nationally recognized series of online degrees. We've been ranked as having some of the best online degrees in the country in nursing and business, in areas that are really high demand in the state of Idaho and around the country. We also have wonderful 2+2 partnerships with our community colleges. And that's really important to us because for a lot of people, that's where they do a lot of exploration, where they figure out what they want to study. And so we want to make that as smooth and seamless a transition as possible so that folks can join us over here at the university for that 4-year degree or potentially for graduate education if they're ready. And we're also doing things like we've created programs that are based on the needs of a community. So we've built a partnership in McCall that's helping to offer a resort management degree up there so that we have folks who can train in the areas that are really critical. We're really proud too of our gap year program. And what we discovered with that program is that it wasn't just students who were in their gap year between high school and college who used it. And what it does is it allows students to take some classes online while they have a dedicated faculty mentor to help them figure out their path. And they write for that person and talk with that person and connect with that person. And that allows people to explore in an extremely low cost way. It's only $1,200 for the program. And it allows them to really explore and have a dedicated faculty mentor to help them figure out their path. So we have hundreds of degree options, and those range in everything from the arts to engineering to the health sciences and all the traditional degrees you associate with higher education. But we also have a number of ways to make those programs tailored to you and more specific to your needs.
So many great opportunities. That's so awesome. And I want to come back to the gap year program because I think that's an especially awesome program. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned rural efforts, and that's such an important effort. And most of Idaho, I mean, right here in the Treasure Valley, we have so many options, right? But most of Idaho really could be classified in what some might call a higher education desert, where there's really not many options around. And you mentioned those rural efforts. We also know that those folks may not get to experience them due to affordability. So really intentional, important efforts. I want to ask President Everett, do you have any efforts that the College of Idaho is making to wrap in some of those more rural students?
Thanks, Holly. Absolutely. About almost 25% of our students come from rural zip codes. We're about 60% Idaho kids too. So it's always been important to us to be a school, a College of Idaho that serves Idaho kids. And now we serve them with 81 different countries. So I think that's a great mix. How we do it, we've got a real outreach to the Hispanic population led by Arnaldo Hernandez, who's been around for a long time, who travels the state. This year we were able to host the Hispanic Leadership Conference. So we had about 800 students on our campus. So that's a big outreach. Then one that's surprising that people wouldn't think of is athletics. Marlene's on the call. Everybody knows about Boise State athletic programs, and they compete on a national level at a high level. They can't get all, some of the students that we recruit they aren't the level to play at Boise State. So we get a lot of these kids from rural communities that want to continue their education and be able to participate in athletics. One of them, Kaya Evans, was one, our most recent Rhodes Scholar. Sometimes people don't like it, but she makes no bones about it. She wouldn't have come here if she couldn't have played soccer, and she wouldn't have come here if it hadn't been affordable. She was looking to go out of state, and so it's important to provide that financial assistance. Adding football, we have more students, more Idaho kids on our football team than the three other schools combined as of last year. And that may change this year, but we're able to recruit a lot of those kids, and they get here and get an education. So that works out well. One more plug for Rhodes Scholars. We've had 8 of them in our history. One came from Arco, Idaho. One came from Oakley, Idaho. I think you have a better odd of winning the mega lottery than becoming a Rhodes Scholar from places like that. And that really goes back to our roots. Our founder said, let them come, let them all come, and we'll see what they can do. So we really try to make an opportunity to give students that experience that we can provide here. So it's a big deal to us.
That's incredible. 8 Rhodes Scholars. Wow. So awesome. Well, I wanted to talk briefly about age groups and some opportunities. This is near and dear to me because I took 9 years off between my 3rd and 4th year. I went back to College of Idaho and finished at age 30. So I was definitely a non-traditional student. And I know there are so many viewers and people out there just like me who have just finished. My friend on Facebook graduated yesterday. I'm so proud of her. She's 34 now. So just awesome opportunities out there. And tell us a little bit, President Daniels, I'll start with you. What efforts do you make to wrap in age groups that are outside of that 17 to 22 age group?
Well, this has historically been a challenge for us because the field training requires almost 8 hours, of a work environment. It's how we're able to develop such strong skills and knowledge and behavior in just a 15-week program. However, and I kind of briefly just mentioned it a few minutes back, but recently we're instituting a special focus around an after hours and weekend type offering, which I'm calling the Working Student Program, that would reach those non-traditional students. This is a new type of program for Northwest Lineman College, but it's important because it explores and keeps doing what's best for the student. And like you mentioned, Holly, we're not there today reaching all of the potential, even though that if you were to look at the demographics that come to all of the campuses or that move into all of the apprenticeships, they're from all over the country. But I got started late in my career as well, even trying to come back and get my undergrad and then master's. And I had to do it through more of the backdoor, non-traditional way. And that's not easy for people. And I believe a model like this, where it would be online, that would allow students not to have to travel to do the curriculum or the academic portion, but then they'd have to make the effort to do the the field portion right on campus. So we could cut some of that time out that takes them away from their jobs or their families and things like that, and lets them figure out how to, try to tackle that little piece where they need to be in person.
Love that. That is phenomenal. And you're right. It's so difficult when you're raising a family and all those things to find time to study. So that's an incredible opportunity. President Tromp, you mentioned the gap year program, and I want to come back to that a little bit. It's a great opportunity for students who may not know what they want to study, or maybe they just had something happen in life and they need to push the reset button. But some people might think that you mean this is a year off, and it's not a year off, right? Can you explain what that program is and how it's unique to Boise State?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, we've received national recognition for this program because it's so unique. So it gives people the opportunity while they're at work or while they're at home, whatever they're doing in the rest of their life. So if you're a mom with kids, if you're working full time, this program is a super low cost program that allows you to study and do classes online. So they're completely flexible, asynchronous classes. But the whole time you're also working with that faculty mentor. So you're building credits for the future and for a an idea, a plan that you might have for your own life, and letting you actually make progress towards that goal with this really flexible, creative solution. But it doesn't leave you out there on your own. It's a little bit like our community impact program. Our whole idea is, how do we build meaningful human support networks for someone who wants to be in school? And so that program allows you to get that one-on-one mentorship, so that you're getting that guidance, you're getting to reflect on your experience. And sometimes what people discover is it's not what they want to do. We had a student who had started out in engineering and left school, went out into the workplace, worked for a long time, because what that student found is they really weren't interested in the kind of work they were doing every single day. Came back and did the gap year program and discovered that they wanted to be a teacher, but to teach in STEM fields. And so we were able to help someone get into an education program and produce another teacher for our state, which is such a high demand area and where we have such need. And a lot of people don't realize that, because they see, our traditional age students at our football games sitting in the student section. The average age of a student at Boise State is 26. And that's because we've historically served so many non-traditional students. And while we have a lot of undergraduates who are traditional age, almost 30% of our undergrads are over 22. And we strive to find ways to give people credit for prior work experience, so that can help on your path to your degree. We have partnerships with a lot of folks in industry so that we can work with your employer to help you get your degree at a lower cost, maybe in partnership with them. And right now we serve 1,800 veterans at Boise State. So these are folks who might have families, have jobs, but we're providing wraparound services. In fact, we have one of only a handful of full service veteran centers, a one-stop shop for everything. Accessing your benefits, getting academic support, advising, all of those things happen in one place. And so we have the highest proportion of veterans in the entire state at Boise State. So we're looking for a lot of ways that we can help those students get access. And sometimes it's a barrier for people to imagine going back to school if they're a non-traditional student. They think they're going to be the only person in their classroom who's over 30. It's just not true. It's just not the reality. And we can help you find a pathway where you're going to meet a fascinating cohort of students who are working like you are, who can connect with you. But also, when you are in a classroom with younger students, you're going to get the chance to mentor them and help them advance and grow in ways that we just can't when it's a full classroom full of traditional age students.
Wow, what a unique opportunity. That is so cool. And I was personally just really impressed by that program. And I found a video of some of your students telling the same story. I just want to share that really quickly here.
Going into the program, all I wanted was just a next step on what I should do.
Being in this program has helped me realize that I can do things that I wanted to do and things that I haven't thought of I could do.
The Bronco Gap Year program provides valuable time for you to save money, focus your interests, and start or restart your college experience with a stronger sense of purpose.
I was feeling pretty lost by the time my graduation came around. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do.
Having heard of the program, I decided to let myself be helped by others instead of doing it all on my own.
This program gives them a place where they can be both in their lives, working, doing the things that they need to be doing at the moment, but also connecting with their college goals.
It was exactly what I was looking for. It was flexible, but gave me guidance, and I was really able to explore different opportunities or options that I'd never been able to do before.
Students are matched with a faculty mentor, so they work one-on-one with a faculty member. They also are matched with a current student. They also have support from the program, and we connect them to campus resources, so career services and advising.
I just wanted the next step, and that's exactly what I got.
So incredible. What awesome stories. And I know that there are so many programs in all of these colleges and universities that really cater to groups of students, but this one really resonated and I wanted to share it. Let's talk a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously that affected everyone, and education had some really unique challenges. And I would love to hear how all of you changed your methods of delivery of instruction during the pandemic. And now that we're finally on the tail end of that, how do things look now? President Everett, let's start with you.
Thanks, Holly. Yeah, I'm impressed hearing what's happening at Northwest Lineman College and Boise State and all the innovations. And I'll tell you, here at the College of Idaho, we're one of the criticisms I'd give of a small liberal arts college is we're not really quick to adapt generally. Well, we didn't have a choice during COVID. So I would say one of the biggest things that happened is just a mindset that we can do this. If we had gone to the faculty and said, all right, we're going to consider moving to online, we wouldn't have done that. That's not our lane. But if we had done that, it had taken us 3 years to get approval, probably at least. We did it in 10 days because we had to. And so that alone just taught us that there are things that we have to consider. We have to move more quickly than academia often does. So and I'm pleased with how we responded to that. It is interesting when you've got international students that can't get home on breaks. You know, they're in countries that they just can't get back to. So we had to also continue to provide residential services and do it safely and deliver meals to students. So it was an interesting time. Summer, many of the students couldn't go back. We don't have a summer program, so we found ways to create opportunities for jobs and income for the students, tried to make sure that they fit into their curricular program. We also uncovered, some of the equity issues that I think this pandemic has shown us. We started a food pantry. Probably should have started before the pandemic, and it continues after. We tonight, Holly had told you we're going to have our fashion show, and it's our fashion show from the thrift store we have on campus. I say thrift store, all the clothes are free, but many of our students, they come from countries where they've never had to have a winter jacket, and so that's continued to be strong. We've gotten more support from host families. I think what it's going to do going forward, it's made us kind of double down on why we think small liberal arts education for the population we serve. I love the fact we've got 3 very different programs here, all very relevant to different populations. But for us, that small liberal arts residential experience with close faculty relationships, mentoring services that we've all, I think everybody would say that's in a residential. I know Marlene would. We've had to do more on the side of wellness opportunities for students, emergency support fund, and that continues. Going forward, we're going to look at certificate programs and graduate programs where we can work that's in a more market-driven way, where we provide asynchronous opportunities for continuing education at the graduate level. It's also taught us that we can be more flexible in the workplace. We need some people that are here every day, but there are some folks that are working in hybrid situations, and we've got a few that are working entirely remotely. That's allowed us to attract some talent we might otherwise not have been able to do. So as tough as it was, I think all of us got better. And I think our students, hats off to our students, they have gone through a lot. I think they will be a very resilient group as they move forward in their careers.
That's phenomenal. And resilience is the word, that is for sure. This group of students that had to go through all of that, they will be stronger than all of us, I'm sure. President Daniels, how about you guys over there at Northwest Lineman College? How did things change during the pandemic, and how are they different now post-pandemic?
Well, I could probably piggyback right off what Jim said. I mean, we learned a ton too, and we probably weren't prepared. And it impacted us pretty hard. We had to shut down for a week. In the big scheme of things, a week wasn't much, but because we weren't ready, we had to find ways to get prepared, and we'd been doing it the same way for 20 plus years. And it really caused us to dig deep and find better ways to, reach the students. We had some other factors too, because if you recall, state to state, we're in multiple states, and the rules around COVID were sometimes vastly different. Made things very, very challenging, but amazingly, again, we only shut down for a week. But our team led by our chief education officer and the curriculum team did just a Herculean effort to basically put systems in place, online testing, the required technology to be able to teach online. We just moved heaven and earth so quickly, which was an amazing feat by itself, and all the employees there just had buckled down to make this come together. And I hope we never have to do that again, but it was quite the feat. And that we've kept some of it in place. I mentioned, early on that the instruction and the way students learn and things like that, they have to be there. It's pretty difficult to learn how to climb from a video. So we've kept some of the online stuff in place. I mentioned earlier how we're still developing and moving forward, using technology as a platform to walk us into the future. But it was a challenge, but I think we moved through it pretty well, and the students were okay. We got one other little benefit that maybe others didn't, and if you recall, it became the rule or law around critical infrastructure. So somewhere deep in 400 pages, there was a line that allowed critical infrastructure or craft training, things like that, to kind of stay in place. That helped us, keep going forward. So I would say, a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck helped us through the COVID.
I love that. A lot of hard work and a little bit of luck. Should put that on my wall. I love it. Well, one of the biggest obstacles to accessing higher education, of course, is affordability and the cost of education. And some scholars argue that affordability of higher ed is linked to class. So, President Tromp, I want to start with you. Is that still the case in your assessment? And what solutions might exist for affordability obstacles?
Well, the first thing I want to mention is public higher education nationally. So in the last few decades, states have chosen, even when their own state constitution, for example, says that higher education should be as close to free as possible, which is what it says in many states. And this is based on the Morrill Act from the 1960s, when we established land grant institutions and then grew public higher education across the country. States would essentially fund higher education the way they funded public K through 12, which meant that it was as close to free as possible for people. Over the last several decades, there have been greater and greater demands on our states in terms of things. They're spending more money on healthcare. They're spending more money on prison. They're spending more money on infrastructure. And even now we have to add things like technological infrastructure, like access to broadband. But there's been about a 30% decline nationally in the amount of funding that's been provided to public higher education. And that's true in the state of Idaho too. And President Satterlee at Idaho State did a very interesting study where he looked at the data on the state of Idaho and discovered that universities in Idaho cost the same if you adjust for inflation as they did 30 years ago. So we've essentially held our costs steady if you count for inflation, when other institutions around the country, their costs have spiked. So we're one of the most reasonable, cost-effective educations in the country, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard for students to access education. And as the state has diminished its investment in higher education, which doesn't mean the raw dollar amount has diminished, but as we've grown the number of students in higher education, proportionally the amount they've given per student has diminished. As that investment has diminished, that cost burden has shifted to students and their families or their supporters. And so that means it's become increasingly challenging. As a first generation graduate myself, whose dad was a trona miner and coal miner, higher education just seemed astronomically expensive and out of reach for me. It was only by virtue of scholarships that I was able to go. So my great dream at Boise State is that we can become a needs blind institution for Idaho students that is able to cover whatever a student can't afford in order to come to school. And it's one of the 3 pillars of our comprehensive fundraising campaign that we'll launch in the fall is student scholarships. So it's a very, very high priority for me. And 75% of our students right now receive financial aid to come to Boise State University. And of this, 45% of our students graduate with $0 in student loan debt. And of the 55 that have some student loan debt, it is less than a third the price of a 2022 pickup truck. And we put that in the metric of pickup trucks because we heard from people all around the state that the reason they weren't coming to college was that they needed to buy a pickup. So for all 4 years, your balance of debt could be as low as nothing to a third the price of a pickup truck, which is incredibly low priced compared to the rest of the country. But that doesn't mean it's not hard for people. So we are working really, really hard to provide those kinds of scholarships, support. Like President Everett, we have a food pantry to help our students who are food insecure. We have options to give people all different kinds of support. And Albertsons has generously supported that food pantry, as has one of our really generous philanthropic donors. So we're looking for ways to try to help our students make ends meet. And that often is especially true for students who are trying to work and support a family. The extra money that it takes to come to school is hard. So we're trying to ensure that socioeconomic class or income is not a barrier for our students, but we recognize that it's a challenge for anyone.
I could never afford it. That's such something that weighs on everybody's mind. So really noble effort. I appreciate that. President Everett, do you feel like your institution, the private education, is harder for some students? Do you offer scholarships? What affordability aspects and obstacles might exist for students to pursue education at the College of Idaho?
Thanks. Marlene gave a great overview of where we are across the landscape, I think. I'm the old guy in the room almost every time now, it seems like. And you didn't hear a lot about student debt when I was going to college in the 70s. So it's a new phenomenon. Her vision is exactly our vision. We would love to be able to provide the experience we provide at the College of Idaho for any student, regardless of their ability to pay. That's the dream. That's the aspiration. I hope I live to see that. Having said that, we work really hard on. We were recognized as being #1 in the country for social mobility by U.S. News and World Report. That's a metric that says we take low-income students and get them to graduation and on careers better than anybody in the country. We're really proud of that. Started with our founder, who said, "Let them come, let them all come, and we'll see what they can do." I talked about Kai Evans before. She wouldn't have been here without financial aid. Our Davis scholars wouldn't be here without financial aid. We've just started something called the Elgin and Elaine Baylor Opportunity Fund. Elgin Baylor came to the college. A lot of people may not even recognize that name. He was the best basketball player in the world when he arrived here in 1954 on the campus of the College of Idaho. He came here because we gave him an opportunity. No school in the country would offer a person of color to play on an integrated basketball team. So the little College of Idaho got the best basketball player in the world, along with 5 other African Americans, and that launched the rest of his life, which was a pretty wonderful life from that point on. First time he ever drank out of a drinking fountain that wasn't segregated, classroom that wasn't segregated, lived in a dorm, an integrated dorm. That all happened here in Caldwell. That's the experience we want to provide for everybody, whether they're an athlete or not. So we're driving in that direction, but it comes at a cost. it puts a strain on the keeping it, staying in business. As a private institution, we don't get state funds. That's sometimes a mixed blessing, because we can also do things the way we think best serve our students. The expenses that we have now, people don't realize. I mean, we've got students that have PTSD. You think about some of the places they're coming from, so you have to have wellness services, food pantries, things. And those are an absolute must. It's almost 100% of our students are on financial. Get some financial support. Some of it is not need-based. Some of it's just academically based. But that's also important, to get those best and brightest students on your campus. Just like Marlene, this is surprising. We are probably half the price of what most schools like us are around the country. And if you go back to the Northeast, we'd be about a third the cost. 55% of our students graduate without debt. So we're really proud of that, but it takes a lot of effort, and it's hard to maintain that and make sure you pay people appropriately, provide the kind of benefits you need to provide to make this. We're for the first time ever, we're having problems with faculty members being able to afford housing. Here they are, they get PhDs and get their dream job, and then they're struggling with housing. So there's a lot of challenges pulling in different directions. But the goal is to make it affordable to every student that has worked hard to earn the opportunity to be here.
I absolutely love that. We all want to graduate without debt, right? So that's fantastic that both of your institutions are working so hard to do that. President Daniels, I wanted to ask you a little different version of this question, because your college is more industry-based and it's more skills development and workforce development. So what efforts are underway at Northwest Lineman College to help workforce development be less costly?
Well, that's a great question. And, we kind of talked about it. Craft training is a really high cost endeavor, right? That's largely influenced by, really expensive equipment, tools. We still have brick and mortar, and where we don't need that, we try to eliminate that. But it still requires a little bit of that hands-on approach. And we recognize that. Some of the things that we, that build into that too is obviously having, for us, we recruit the very best instructors. And those instructors also have to improve their educational level to become, a professional technical educator. So there's some of these costs that kind of drive into, the tuition being perceived as expensive. But on the flip side, the earning power for a student to complete a 15-week program to earn 2 to 3 times what that tuition costs them, literally as they hit the streets, is, kind of part of the opportunity with that. So, we try to drive out some of the costs. We bring in the right instructors or contractors if, they're better suited for, teaching the course, like crane training. It's a required skill set, in the field. CDL training, you got to have a commercial driver's license. My team and my company focuses strictly on the core in the heart, right to the student. So the curriculum and field competency. So we try to build in some of those things that will kind of maybe lessen some of the tuition costs. NLC has always been sensitive to tuition increases. Over the years, I've watched that, and there's been years where year after year after year where there wasn't any increase, and then sometimes that changes. So the scholarship opportunities, I'm not sure if anybody's been following, but in the legislature, there was a bill, HB 24, that just passed that is really targeted towards craft workers or like nursing degree, I believe, and things like that, where students can go and apply for an $8,000 grant that's funded by the state. And we tried to help lead and champion part of that effort to create the opportunity for trades folks. And that just passed. And I think it's pending now, the governor's signature. So that's a pretty big lift, really, because it's controversial, and I get all that. The benefits, I think, will put workers right here in this state. And that's what we were looking for, students and income and workers and economy right here in our backyards. So, we also are big proponents of, funding and bringing in veterans. So a little over 20% of our enrollments are veterans. And we work very hard to try to keep that in place. Our veterans are they're great students. They've been around, and they've obviously been in the military and given their lives for that. And then they are great leaders as they come to this program, and they keep teaching. So we really love to have veterans on campus because it does so much for the younger students. So those are all part of some of our efforts to try to bring scholarships or better opportunity or lower costs into the whole entire tuition picture.
Love that. Yes, veterans they have so much wisdom to share, right? That's awesome. Well, we have time for one last question. So each of you will have about 3 minutes for your answer. And this last question is a little more personal. And we'd love to know, we've talked about a lot of these obstacles, and some of them are perceived, some of them are mindset, others are affordability, those sorts of things. So we'd like to hear from each of you. What was your journey like when you went through higher education? And what were some of those obstacles that you went through? And then what do your respective colleges or universities do to support those same obstacles? So let's start with President Daniels. We'll come back to you.
Oh, you're going to start with me. I love to be first on this. NLC's solution in helping potential students feel prepared and understand the program and the trade well. It's beneficial for the students, and it's important to us that potential students are fully informed, they're educated and prepared for what a career in the trade truly looks like. The better prepared they are in understanding craft before enrolling, the higher our completion and placement rates, which in turn impacts campus morale and for students and staff. Line work's tough and it's unique, and it has challenges like climbing at heights, which a lot of people don't realize that, and it's surprising. We still see that where people didn't realize they'd have to, work in those types of conditions. Our missions teams does a huge effort in helping in this area. They do a great job of connecting with each and every student who enrolls and focuses on continual improvement. We also try to get every student in for a tour for the campuses, encourage them to sit in the classrooms and the field training to help them understand what they're embarking on. It's a positive learning environment, which I think in education we would like to assume that's always the case, but I can speak for Northwest Lineman College. The amount of education and training that's put into instructors and staff to create that learning environment is it's just endless, and we spend a massive amount of time and money, trying to make sure that that's important. It helps with retention, learning, and overall satisfaction, and the other presidents I'm sure would concur. We try to help our students and see themselves in the trade. And again, this opportunity as they enter into Northwest Lineman College is just one door. If they cross through that door, there are so many more opportunities on the other side. And that message doesn't always ring home because sometimes it's easy to quit, sometimes it's easy to back out. But making it through the door is the challenge, but the reward is endless over on the other side. And we just spend a lot of time trying to teach and explain that because the industry is huge. This is just one step. And sometimes students don't understand that, but it's our job to teach them that.
Love that.
So-
Sounds like it's so supportive. That's awesome. So cool. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so let's go to President Tromp. Tell us about your journey, and then we'll finish with President Everett.
I was a first-generation college graduate, and for me, it just seemed financially completely out of reach. In fact, I couldn't even afford the application fees, and I had a lot of support and a lot of help to get to school. And in fact, I got offered athletic scholarships and didn't understand, offered an opportunity to compete athletically. I didn't understand that that would have paid for my school. I just knew nothing. And of course, this is pre-internet. I just didn't really have a lot of way to see my way forward and even ways to access that information. So what we really try to do for our we actually identify our first generation students as a particular population that should have support. And my son isn't going to have the same questions about higher ed as I did as a brand new college student. And so, or he might, but I can answer them for him. And so we're really working to intervene with students who are first generation, come from rural communities, who come from families that don't have anyone who's gone to college before, so that we can provide that kind of mentorship along with the support of navigating the financial aid system, of navigating how you get housing on campus, of navigating how you choose your classes. So we're trying to provide a lot of wraparound support for our students and identifying those students who need the supports most of all, so that more of the breadth of our population in the state of Idaho and around the country gets access to that critical education. It's becoming more and more vital to have some kind of post-secondary education in order to be successful. And we want to help as many people get that as possible.
Thanks. I think I'm up. I grew up in a single-parent family. My father passed away when I was 8, 5 kids in the family. My mom didn't have a college education. Coaches and mentors were huge to me growing up. I had a great mom, but it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and college helped me get there. To be in an area of either working a nonprofit or higher ed, I've been so blessed. And so that drives me every day to want to make sure that others have that opportunity. So I grew up just outside of Detroit and in a very nice public school system, 15 miles south of where I was in Detroit. If I had been in the same situation, I probably wouldn't have gotten to where I am today. That's what we're trying to fight. Higher ed is the ticket, whether it's Lineman College, Boise State, College of Idaho. People need to continue their education. We need, there are jobs that we can't even imagine today. We're trying to prepare students for those jobs. The return on investment is huge, but you have to be able to afford it. You have to be able to get there. So that drives us every day to try to make this happen. And we know that the study that we hang our hat on of what makes a student successful in college is having a mentor and 2 good friends. And we think we can do that very well here to provide at least a mentor and at least a couple of friends that will help students, encourage them when they need encouragement, kind of kick them in the seat when they need that, and then get them to do beyond what they ever thought possible. So it's a fun place to be. I wake up excited to go to work every day and grateful for the opportunities I've been given.
That's all the time we have today, and we're so grateful for all 3 of you for sharing your stories and more about your colleges and universities and how you're increasing access to education for everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. This was inspiring and informative. And I just have to tell you, we have another treat for you coming up soon. We have episode 2 of the higher education series, and we're going to be talking about innovations in artificial intelligence like ChatGPT and how that might apply to higher education. So you'll want to tune into that, which is going to be April 27th at noon. And we want to thank again our sponsor, which this series is only made possible by Sparklight, our sponsor. And we want to thank our media partners as well for broadcasting this series on their platforms as well. We have Idaho Education News, Idaho Capital Sun, the Idaho Press, and the Idaho Statesman. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, presidents, and we'll see you next time on the Higher Education Series.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.